It did not take long for the smearing of Senator Sanders to get in the full effect. There was an article by the New York Times, I believe it was yesterday, that described or tried to parallel him to Eugene McCarthy, apparently, because that's we're not that different in technology from 51 years ago. And, people called it out, they said whatever, but I wanted to go more to the conspiracy theory aspect of his detractors because, like I said before, you can have legitimate criticisms of him or any other presidential candidate. I've oftentimes stated my contempt for him not supporting BDS, but regardless, I still think he's better than any of the other people that are in the field. So I go on Twitter yesterday, and this is the day after he launched his campaign, after he gets $6 million from I believe it was 200,000 contributors, over 200,000, breaks records. It's really a testament to his popularity. He's currently the most popular politician in the U.S. So it kind of, you can see where he would raise more than other people. But I go and I look at the comments that people are leaving, the people who I guess are his detractors that aren't really upset with him over any particular policy, but they're more so butthurt because they've retroactively created a world where he ran a third party bid against Hillary and was the reason she lost. She was just a you know whatever. So I read their commentary, and there's a person who says that the money that was provided by his individual contributors was subsidized by Putin or otherwise, that Russia was actually where he was getting the funding from. And I almost want to tear my hair out because I remember when Harris raised 1.5 million within a day of her campaign launching, but I don't remember anyone, even her detractors, including myself, ever saying that those weren't individual people. 38,000 that donated. I never would say, well, I don't like this person, so a foreign government must be funding them with millions of dollars. No, I fully understand that you have people who actually like these people, but again, that shows how I call it Bernie derangement syndrome. That's exactly what they have, to where they've created some alternate world where suddenly Bernie and Putin have anybody they don't like basically has something to do with Russia. That's the new Red Scare. We've been over that a couple of times before. But I was also watching some of the commentary that was associated with the predictions of when he would either drop out or no longer be in the race. There was a person who said it would be after the first couple of races, or rather, somewhere between Iowa and South Carolina. There was another individual who tried to say that he would find himself not being as popular as he was before. And I thought to myself, actually, I'm just remembering there was another person who also said that he would have been more concerned if Sanders raised 12 million in a day. And I said, wait a second. This person, this candidate, raised more in one day than anybody ever, and that still isn't good enough for you. So you see how the goalpost progressively goes up as it relates to this person that these people don't like. They can't objectionably see anything. Whether you like him or not, he is the most popular politician currently. And when I say that, again, it's not meant to brag or to make it seem as if my position is the one to think of and consider as the majority. For example, back in, I believe it was early 2010, I can actually provide the poll right here because I was looking for it, and I try to tell people I remain impartial about a lot of this stuff. But back in 2010, Hillary, when she was Secretary of State, was actually the most popular politician. Let's see if I can try this. Publish this thing. She had a 64% approval rating. This is from Web Archive, Bloomberg, and it's not letting me put that in there. But you get my point that I'm not attempting to impart my views as reality. Because even back then, in my opinion, her views were bad. But again, the tide has shifted, or it changes over time. So, for example, her approval rating now is somewhere in the 30s. But you see how, as gradually as time went on, it went from going up to going down. So presently, Sanders is the most popular. And as a result of that, he's going to attract more support from people. Let me say hello to Biozin or Beozin. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not good with names. And I swear I was watching the additional commentary that Trump provided, where he said, oh my God, Sanders raised 6 million. I said to myself, it's a sad day when the person that is the main rival of this presidential candidate is more impartial and more willing to accept the fact that people actually believe in him and are favorable and will donate than the Democratic voters who claim to believe in democracy and how Trump has supposedly done away with it, even though it was a Democratic president who jailed journalists 6 times with the Espionage Act. But let's not. We can talk about Obama's record some other day. But when I was going around on Twitter, I also stumbled across a couple of other messages where, as I said before in the video I did about the announcement, a lot of times I'll share something that goes along with whatever I'm saying, and then people will reject it. So, for example, I wanted to just share this Politics Daily article from 2010 with Hillary having the most, being the most popular at that point, because I wanted to highlight things change. People, their minds on individuals gradually get different, or sometimes are reversed. That's why Sanders went from having no name recognition to, exploding in terms of people being able to figure out who he is in just a short span of a year. Algorithms now win elections, yet there's no freedom of choice anymore. We are trapped inside the system. Our behavior preferences, and I think I need sleep. So okay, well, I'll see you. But that's my point. That when you have people who don't want to accept reality or things that actually are factual, they just push away from it. Just like I freely admit that Biden polls on a lot of instances just as well as Bernie, and probably would be the only one of those establishment figures. So, like not talking about Bernie or Tulsi, that I could see actually giving Trump a run for his money. But the problem is Biden's record as a person who runs in primaries, presidential primaries, elections that are not statewide, like in Delaware, where he's from. He does terribly in. He ran in 2008, dropped out after I believe it was the Iowa caucus, ran in 88, dropped out before it was even 88. So I'm simply stating that if you look at his record in primaries versus Bernie's record in a primary where he overperformed, it's not hard to figure out where I'm not too intimidated by that person. Especially when you actually have Biden himself admitting that his own past and voting record wasn't that good. So he gave this speech a while back about how he could have been less tough on crime or whatever. Just that kind of stuff where they slowly have evolved, as one person tried to put it to me. And I was watching Klobuchar's town hall on CNN where she was asked about free college, and it was a sight to behold, because the student had just asked her, "Can you give me a yes or no answer on whether or not you will forgive loan debt?" And yada yada yada. But the point is, he wanted a yes or no answer, and she drones on and on and on about high school and what her husband had and blah 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 blah. And then he outright says, "Can you say or rather, Don Lemon says, hey, can you say yes or no?" And then she says no, and then they pan over to the guy's face. It's like that's the person they want me to believe is more acceptable as a presidential candidate than Sanders, the person who literally inspires no one, the person who got propped up by the establishment as a result of the other people that are in the race, like Booker or Harris or Gillibrand or any of them, appearing to signal that they want to, at least again, portray themselves as being Bernie-esque, having the same positions on issues. Of course, now we're starting to see them relapse and show that they were never serious about it to begin with. My point is that when you have people who refuse to accept the idea that people are attracted to wanting to vote for Sanders based on his record and also what he supports, and not some identity politics crap, you end up getting smeared. I had a person who, when people were saying, "Let's get rid of Pelosi's fossilized hag self," oh, how could you? You guys are sexist to want to get rid of her. So if you don't like this one female politician, which had a 29%, basically, this person believes that anyone who doesn't like this person is sexist. So the 29% approval rating that Pelosi had when she was speaker the first time, from I believe was 2010, that was all guys. 80% of the U.S. was men. Again, that's how out of their minds these people are. And another one actually had stated that it was a stereotype to say I will support a woman, just not that woman. And then another one that I watched on Twitter tried to use that in the context of Bernie, And I literally had one user who was going around saying no older white males. And I said, wait a second, you can't shout about racism and then say something that's racist. I've made it very clear. I don't care if the person's female. I don't care what their ethnicity is, but I want the person to. That's why you go from supporting this older Caucasian male to this minority person, minority female, referring to Tulsi, because they have similar positions, are the most similar out of any of the candidates. But their mind is so warped that they think people that vote actually vote that way. It's really insulting to the voters because they're saying to you, if I don't stick somebody that looks like you, that's very bland, that offers nothing but except a similar appearance, you will support them. So, and that was proven to be false during the both this election, the election before that. You had plenty of women who voted for Obama over Hillary. You had plenty of women that voted for Trump over what was her name, Fiorina. So it's not hard to figure out that stuff doesn't really quite work. But these are the same tricks that get them screwed over. And I remember, as I was saying at the start of this, the New York Times in their article, they've really solidified to me over the last 2 years that they're not a source that is very reputable when when they cover a lot of these stories. They have an agenda where they piece it in a certain way. So, for example, they covered the sexual harassment allegations against Sanders staffers, and they were just like everybody else trying to paint him as the one who, should be in control of all these different people. Basically, turn him into the puppet master, and he should be able to tell this person when to do this and when not to do that, while he's running around trying to campaign. Just the ridiculousness that was involved with that. But you also had the other article where the New York Times proved themselves to not really make much sense in terms of their editors and the contributors showing themselves to have a superior intellect. If anyone remembers the article they wrote where they endorsed Cuomo, and they spend the whole article trashing him, and then they say he has the potential to lead after 8 years. They don't say 8 years, but they're telling you that a governor who's been in office for 2 terms, 2 4-year terms, has the potential to lead. Only in America, or only here, can we give anyone an excuse for anything. We can have crappy politicians, and they get away with being in office because they're supporting the same system that helped them get into power, that makes sure that no one else can come up. So it's been a crazy past 2 days, and ironically enough, we're just getting started. I remember when I was on Twitter, there was a user I support who had posted about the millions that Bernie got on his first day, and this person goes, well, Trump has whatever. And I'm like, well, think about this. If he can get this much in one day out of a campaign cycle that's going to last for over a year, it's not that hard to figure out that, maybe he'll be able to catch up or continue to get something akin to what he had on that first day. But, they don't think critically. So it all goes back to what I was saying. And they really don't understand that the media in its stupidity, which does have a bias against Trump, but it's not because of what he does, it's because of how he speaks. They gave him billions of dollars in free advertising. So a lot of it didn't factor in what Trump himself was doing, but just what the media chose to cover. And, I'd rather if the media, the advertising was negative, but they put him in front of a camera for free. His campaign didn't have to waste any cash putting up vote for Trump or any of that stuff on TV. So if they're going to do the same thing for Bernie, I welcome them to do it. Because from what it appears, the more the media bashes a certain candidate or person, the more popular they get. That's why when Fox was sitting over here crapping on AOC, it was really stupid because a majority of Democrats or liberals or whatever, people that are on the left, already don't like them. So if someone is shown to be the enemy of that network, it's the enemy of my enemy is my friend, basically. And a lot of people hate CNN, including myself, and MSNBC and all the other networks. So if you bash a politician on there and they appear to be the antithesis of what your network stands for, that person's going to be popular too, or at least be more popular than they were if you weren't covering them, because you're the person that has the stench of unpopularity attached to your name, and it's always going to bite you in the behind when you try to go on a campaign against a certain candidate. They tried to go on a campaign against Trump, and it backfired. They gave him free advertising, uh, all this coverage, a bunch of negative stories that people already were like, whatever, this doesn't actually have to do with the issue. So, people at their base, the independents and some of the people on, both parties a little bit, even though I think that both parties are awful. But people, for the most part, are able to see through the crap, even if they're not as politically in tuned as a commentator or someone that follows this stuff might lead you to believe they are. That's why when Howard Schultz went on to The View and he said, "Oh, well, you don't have to be a billionaire to run for president," all the people in the audience went, because they know that the system is screwed up. It's a really nice thing to know that they don't even have to look this stuff up. They don't have to, research any of it. They can just live their life and watch CEOs make 300 times the amount of a regular worker and know that something is screwed up about the cycle. I went over this before, but I've had users who, when they've done their Bernie smearing, they never talk about any particular policy. And as I said before, I've been more active on Twitter in the last 6 months than the last 3 years. And in that entire time of reading all of those anti-Bernie comments and blah 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 blah, I only ever saw one person who sat back and said, "I don't agree with this idea," yada yada yada. They just went through a litany of ideas. You want to talk about neoliberal? That was a neoliberal voter. They went through free college, went through Medicare for all. They went through, I believe it was the Green New Deal. They crapped all over his stuff, but they were the only person. And they even said, "How the hell are you guys calling yourself anti-Bernie, but then you're backing somebody like Harris or Booker or any of these other people except for Klobuchar who are smart enough to see." They didn't say smart enough, but that see that the wind is changing and that this very popular person, it makes more sense to back their positions if you want a realistic chance of appealing to their voters, which is something that a lot of people didn't see Hillary do. So they were smart enough, even as someone who hated him, to look at the behaviorisms, the mannerisms of the other candidates and their kind of attitude toward his positions. And so when you watch even a person like that who has Bernie derangement syndrome still actually think critically about this stuff, it really shows you that the whole movement is based on being sore losers about an election cycle where the candidate that they chose to run just wasn't popular with people. There was a poll that came out that election day that Hillary and Trump had the lowest approval ratings of any presidential candidates on election day in U.S. history. That wasn't for no reason. People saw through Clinton over being corrupt. People saw through Trump over. Well, I mean, we can be here all day, but my point is that they did not see a good alternative in either of them. So they just stayed home or they didn't bother to vote. That's why, where as much as people talk about the U.S. increasing in population, Obama was able to get his first time around, I believe, 5 million more votes than Hillary. That was for a reason. People weren't enthused anymore. And when you watch a lot of her supporters that are on these social media websites still try to write stuff to people like myself and tell us that we're the reason that Trump won or that whatever, it shows you that they don't quite understand how this works. The candidate is supposed to be the person who appeals to the voters and gets their vote and makes them, actually enthused to want to support them. That's why Bernie, running as an unknown, was able to get 13 million votes. That didn't come out of nowhere, including my own. But the candidate is the one who's supposed to be the person who gets people to vote for them. You're not supposed to go, "Hey, I'm the Democrat. You owe me your vote. If you don't, goodbye." And this is something I've seen with just all of these commentators. They really think that you're going to scare me with Trump and then I'll just vote for whatever's on the other ballot. I bring up the thing with Klobuchar and the free college thing where the guy asked her a simple question, said, "I want a yes or no." And it took her like a whole 2 minutes to even respond back. Oh, it's like, dude, that's the kind of stuff that people see. And they go, "Why would I want that? Why would I want the exact same crap that we've had for years? The same austerity." I mean, like, regardless of what you think about income inequality, the fact that none of these politicians address it other than Bernie and like a little bit of Warren, but not as much, shows that people are aware and adept of the crap that's going on. And I'm really tired of watching people on both sides try to smear voters who are sick of the system. When you have almost 80% of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, or 76%, that is a failed system. The people are not to blame. Otherwise, you wouldn't have three-quarters of them screwed over. What, all of them, were dumb when it came to money? Like, I've watched these scenarios, and they don't care. They say whatever it takes to make themselves feel better. The truth is that Trump is a symptom of the problem. So, for example, if I sit here, I couldn't care less if he tweets or if he writes something to people or whatever. But when I watch them talk about that and they try to smear him over, Mueller or Stormy or again the tweets, it all goes back to why he won. You guys are not focusing on any of the stuff that actually matters. Talk about why the new trade deal he did was terrible and will outsource American jobs. Talk about income inequality that's persisted during his tenure. It was here before his tenure. It's been around for 40 years, austerity in the US, just like in France. They're getting a taste of it right now with Macron. But these people don't care. They'd rather sit on Twitter and these other social media websites, crap on Sanders, and then never do anything themselves. That's why when I watch that the users that are on these websites, I oftentimes say, if you truly believe that he can't win, why don't you yourself run for anything with your quote unquote moderate positions and appeal to the opposite party and see how many of those pricks vote for you. You'll get shocked when it's none. The biggest mistake any politician can make is trying to sell out their base or not pander to their base to to hopefully get people from the other side to switch over. That's why all this talk of running a moderate and all this crap is just like, I watched one person that said Sanders is too divisive. I'm like, wait a second. The guy with the highest approval rating out of any of these politicians is too divisive. So doesn't that automatically, like, by that definition, we should just disqualify everybody from running, if since they all have lower approval ratings than him? It's like McConnell has a 33% approval rating in Kentucky and he keeps winning elections. So what does that tell you? That you don't have to have some high approval rating to win anything. You can just get, a percentage of people to support you, and there you go. I mean, think about this. You got 300 million people in the U.S., right? And these candidates usually get about 60 million votes. So that's not even what, more than a fifth or less than a fifth of the, because it's like 330 million. That's not even a fifth of the actual Americans saying, "Hey, I want this person." But you can still put out the numbers that, and then people still try to argue back against it. That's why when I shared the story of Sanders going around campaigning for Hillary and even telling Trump voters to support her, they reject that evidence. And when I see that, it tells me you guys really do have derangement syndrome for Bernie. You're not looking at anything critically or objectionably or just at all. I could sit here and badmouth Trump just like any other network or station, but there's plenty of places that already do that. And I'd rather talk about what good things came from him and what bad things came and why it's bad and why we got stuck with him and why the alternative option was horrible too. But people they don't want to actually listen to anything. So I guess I'll just leave it at this. We have another year until voting begins. We have candidates who are literally running that are promising nothing new, like Klobuchar. We have people like Harris and Booker, who just as recently as a year ago were backing positions that are unpopular or that people don't like, with just such as with Harris being opposed to legalizing marijuana until a few months ago, or with Booker being opposed to freedom of speech by supporting the BDS bill. So all of this stuff basically says that they are not they're shapeshifters. That's what I tried to tell another person. They're people who are going to market themselves one way while doing something else in the dark that they don't want to come out. That's why Harris won't talk about why she didn't prosecute Mnuchin. That's why Booker won't talk about when he tried to when he voted against Bernie's pharmaceutical bill while taking 200,000 from Big Pharma. I mean, these are not hard things to figure out, but these clowns will still be able to get people to support them by virtue of just running and appearing attractive and appearing to be something different when their record says the complete opposite. And when you get someone who's around for decades that says the same thing, doesn't change their tune, doesn't flip their script, people don't want to recognize that in a lot of cases. But I've seen people who back Harris. Who one person on Twitter who said, I back Harris, but if it's Bernie as the nominee, I'll support him. That's not someone who has derangement syndrome. That's someone that is, I think, ill informed, and that just is still to an extent reasonable. We'll coalesce around whatever the thing is. But you get my point that it's sad that we have. When you're a progressive, you have everything fighting against you. You have the media, you have members of your own party, you have members of the opposite party, and you expect the Republicans to smear Sanders and anything he does, not the Democrats, especially ones like Sherrod Brown, who went from being one of his closest allies in the Senate to talking about instead of Medicare for all, let's do buying into Medicaid at age 55. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Nobody wants that crap. Why should I have to wait 30 years to get actual good health care? That's insane. But they don't care. And he'll still have a realistic chance of getting some votes. I don't think he'll win, but he'll be able to appeal to somebody, and that's a sad day. So the neoliberalism bubble, along with the conservative bubble of the news outlets and the Republican Party, is all swarming around Sanders. I'm glad that his supporters, including myself, are sticking with him. But we're not sycophants. If he goes away from the views that we support, we avoid him. But the reason that all of these different groups are working against him, big pharma, the defense contractors, the fossil fuel companies, the list goes on, are because they know and are freaked out by the idea of him winning that primary, which if the DNC doesn't rig it again, is a realistic thing, and smashing Trump in states like Iowa or North Carolina or Florida or Pennsylvania, places that haven't gone blue in the last 10 years. That freaks them out. And it should. That this is like, I want you to understand something. The reason I hate his fanatics, right? The people who are on places like let me say hello to Ruben. I've been retweeting some of your stuff. I hope you've seen that. That's the least I can do for one of my two Patreon people that actually will. I told you, man, that thing was going to be just nobody was going to donate to that, but whatever. But the reason I have such objections to the people who are willfully, posting like Never Bernie and they're actual real people, is that they are effectively being fools to a system that doesn't care about them. Big Pharma doesn't care about you. They want your money, and they could care less about your health. That's why they have a system where, I mean, think about how crazy this is. Let's say you're an older person, right? You've got 100,000 in the bank, 200,000. Then you have some surgery that costs thousands and thousands of dollars. So then by the time you're getting ready to retire, you've literally exhausted all your resources on your health. And that's a thing that people have had to deal with and go back to work over. But that is a system in America that has support from Booker, and it has support from the idiots who back Booker by virtue of them supporting Booker. It's not that hard to figure out. Just like all the people that in that O'Rourke versus Cruz race, I tried to say it. My problem with you guys is not the fact that you're against abortion rights. It's not that you're against gay marriage, which those are things I don't agree with, being against that stuff or whatever. It's the fact that you guys will sit here and back a man who is opposed to free college, but won't offer his own alternative to make people actually be able to afford going to school, and supports bombing the same 7 countries that the idiot before Trump was doing, just like the Orange Man. And you guys don't even recognize it. So you guys, by voting for Cruz, are supporting bombing 7 countries, including contributing to the worst humanitarian crisis of modern history in Yemen. But these are the ramifications of their votes. They don't see the bigger picture. I mean, I really do look at a vote for Bernie as a vote for the destruction of a lot of these systems. And if my senators, whether that's Feinstein or Harris, don't support him while he's in office, they're on the chopping block too. However, his last name is spelled Hickenlooper. I can't wait for the Hickenlooper Kasich ticket. We're all excited for that one. I know Ruben is gonna get out his donation of $27 and get next to a Wall Street banker and donate to the Kasich Hickenlooper ticket, which is very popular and will win every state and will be so, widely acclaimed for its bipartisan unity and blah 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 blah, while changing nothing. Say, there's a reason why you never hear Harris talk about Yemen, why you never hear Booker talk about Libya, why you never just they don't discuss this stuff because they don't care. They want to they hope they can get away with not speaking about it because they barely know anything about it, so that when they get in office, if they get in office, that is, they can keep the exact same thing going. It's not hard to figure it out. And it shouldn't be hard to figure out why the media is dead set on making Sanders look like, the most evil man alive. I think all these guys I just pick above are running to be Kamala's VP pick. Oh yeah. Um they all have an agenda. They're all trying to, get higher up. The only one of them I didn't think was that much of a snake was Gillibrand, just because unlike Booker or Harris, she actually was in the Senate for a while. And actually said, my views have changed, whatever. Again, I still think she's one of them, but I don't think she's as bad. But that still isn't saying much. It's like if I gave Klobuchar credit for voting for, what was it, a New Start, which was that Russian treaty. Like, oh, she's anti-war. It's like, no, no, no. Every single Democrat voted for that. If I give her credit for voting for that, I have to give credit to every Democrat for voting for that in the Senate. Are they all going to run for president now? So, her whole record, along with Gillibrand's record, along with Harris's record, along with Booker's record, it's all based around doing whatever comforts the party. They're scared to shake the system. And Sanders has a record that shows, hey, I don't care what you guys think of me. I'm going to do what I think is right. Which again is why they're afraid. And I find it so sad that I truly believe he could win the general election, but and this primary, but I think that other things are in the way that they're going to derail him. I do hope that, like how you mentioned O'Rourke and Hickenlooper, and I hope they all get in. Just keep splitting that establishment neoliberal vote among all the it's like with the Never Trump people. They were too ridiculous to where they couldn't get Rubio to get out of the race and let Cruz go one-on-one with Trump, so they kept splitting the vote over and over and over until Trump won. It's going to be the same thing with if the primary isn't rigged with Sanders. You're going to have 20 people in this crap, and they keep splitting the vote, and Bernie's people keep going to him, and he just keeps being able to pull it off. That I truly believe that will happen if we play our cards right, or if the media doesn't do its usual trickery, which they'll do to some extent, but it still depends on how it's orchestrated. Because if they keep doing these things of finding these false, or rather these not false, these charged stories, like, oh, Sanders, his campaign's sexual harassment the staffers did to each other. That kind of stuff is going to make his people who like him go, hey, leave my guy alone, like it did for Trump's people, and then they donate to him overwhelmingly and stick by him because they watch him get destroyed and smeared by everybody, by Fox, by CNN, by MSNBC, by the Democrats, by the Republicans, by fossil fuel, by big pharma, by defense contractors. Who else? What other industry can we think of? Any one of these groups, they're all freaking out. They're like, we have to make sure he doesn't. We have to shut this down, and they're stupid because, like, let's say worst case scenario, he loses, right? Which I still don't think will happen unless there's actual trickery of rigging the election. There are still other people who have his exact same ideology that are going to just keep running. You're going to get Tulsi again. You're going to get Warren again. You're going to get Ellison or AOC eventually. Like all these people, they don't realize that now that the floodgate has been opened, even if you stop this person who started it, all these different people are going to try, and one of them is going to crack through because they're going to endorse each other. Then the support is that person going the next person. So we're in this for the long run. But their system, you rest assured, Ruben, that thing is getting smashed up, and they're freaking out over it. They already saw a couple of Justice Democrats get elected to the House, and what have they been doing? They've only been in office for 1 month, and they've smeared AOC as stupid, even though Trump has made false, ridiculous statements too. Again, just calling it like it is, people. She said some things that were false. Trump said some things that were false. That's not new. They've smeared Tlaib as a rude person because she swore, even though Trump has sworn repeatedly. They've smeared Omar as anti-Semitic for saying that AIPAC, influences American politicians to be pro-Israel, even though that's exactly what they do. Um, Pretty much the only one they haven't messed with yet is Ayanna Pressley, who already exposed herself as a wolf in sheep's clothing in that video that Jimmy pulled up where she endorsed Hillary, or was saying that Hillary was progressive. So, that the only reason she hasn't gotten smeared is that she probably is the one in that group that is just a pretender, in my opinion. She is definitely the least impressive. I'll put it to you like that. So if Ruben has anything else to say, he can say it. If not, we'll conclude. I think I made my point pretty clear. The smearing has already begun. The never burning people, and I look at their numbers and I go, oh my God, look at all these people. I'm like, wait a second. If millions of people vote in these elections, right? And you get 100,000 of them to like some, which I've never even actually seen that. I've seen at most a couple of tens of thousands. But if you have tens of thousands of people who don't like him in this manner, where they're going on social media campaigning against him and all that, that still is nowhere near the hundreds of thousands who donated to him. I'm just saying, Ruben, I feel much more comfortable about this stuff when I realize how small, because I remember Sanders has like a 90-something percent, like an 80 or 90% approval rating with Democrats. They really don't care that he isn't a member of their party, because they look at his positions, they go, hey, I like that. Screw labels, which is good. They're again, I'm giving them credit for looking at this stuff objectionably or critically. But it's kind of like with the wall, with the GoFundMe, that scam that guy put up, that I told people who support it, don't donate to that because it's not an actual Trump member or member of Trump's administration who put that up. I told one of my peers, I said, hey, look at all these people. It's like 200,000 that donated. Oh my God, what a slap in the face for the Democrats. No. The guy got 20 million from 200,000 people out of the 60 million that voted for Trump. That's not an accomplishment. That's actually less than, I think, 1% of all the voters. So, when you put the numbers in, the actual regular people who oppose Sanders are very small, as far as like actual primary voters. And it's just these different groups that we have to worry about. But, the great thing about a democracy is it's one person per vote. So they can keep writing all that crap online, but it's never going to get to a point where they can actually change tens of thousands of minds to now be pro neoliberal and vote for whoever the hell else is there. So thank you for watching, Ruben. I appreciate it. Have a good day.